there were four of us. Part of the reason to climb the volcano was to climb a mountain and have a fun hiking experience. And part of the reason to climb the volcano was to address the spiritual context of the region and ask God to do a work. So the people in this tribe are very strong Muslims. A lot of supernatural beliefs and a lot of spiritual power in this area. The volcano is known as a site of spiritual power. It's like a high place. In the Old Testament, it talks about building altars and worshiping on the high places. And so part of bringing the gospel into an area that it has never been before involves asking God, through the power of the Holy Spirit, to break the strongholds and principalities. And Sunday morning, July 5th, 1992, we climbed the volcano, got to the very top of the volcano. We had a praise and worship service, and we had a prayer time praying for the gospel of Jesus Christ to visit those people and penetrate the villages that we could see from the top of that mountain. Now, in the center of the bowl, there's a really deep hole. The sides are really steep. And as we turned to walk away from that hole in the center of the bowl, that's when it exploded. This volcano hadn't had an eruption like that since 1976. So the timing of that eruption is pretty remarkable. I've got a picture that was taken by that other climbing team, and that's the picture of the explosion. It was like Mount St. Helens. When it exploded, we heard the noise, we looked back, and it was like looking at jet exhaust. And we were like right next to it as it went up in the air and missed us by just a few yards. So the response was to run, and we ran for about 8 seconds before the debris started falling back on us. And these rocks that fell on us, some of the rocks were about the size of my fist. Some of the rocks were about the size of a bowling ball. They began to pelt us. When they hit, they were so hot that I was wearing a wool jacket, a flannel shirt, and a t-shirt, and they burned instantly. In the time it took them to hit and bounce off, they burned through all the layers of my clothes and gave me a third-degree burn. So there was a big rock sitting there that we had to run past in order to get up out of the crater. And when we started getting pelted with the hot rocks, we dove underneath the edge of that rock. John, whose leg was sticking out, a rock landed on his leg and cracked his leg. Some of the rocks would hit and bounce and roll, and they would roll in and still burn us. The noise was like standing next to a jet engine. It was a constant roar. Yeah, you couldn't hear without shouting at each other. We prayed while we were hiding underneath that rock, and asked the Lord to protect us and stop the volcano. And volcanoes throb; they erupt in pulses, and so we were able to hide in that cleft or in the lee of that rock for about 5 minutes, and then the intensity of the eruption let up, and we were able to then take that opportunity to climb the rest of the way out of the crater and make it down to the tree line, where we made a splint for John's leg. We were still blanketed with sand, and that's one of the reasons we got up and left when we did, is we started getting covered with sand, and I was afraid we were going to be buried. It took about 8 hours to climb down the mountain in our injured condition. The other climbing group was at the top of the mountain when we were there, and it took about a week before they were able to climb and recover the body of one of the Indonesian climbers who was hit with a rock and killed. The eruption happened in 1992, so it was about the middle of our time in Indonesia. By the time we left in 1996, we had seen the Lord create a congregation of majority people in that area that hadn't existed before. We had been able to spearhead a Bible translation project, and the scriptures had never been produced or printed in this particular language. The New Testament was finished in 1996, the year we left. This is the article that was in USA Today. This is the guidepost article. The correlation between the eruption and our praise and worship and prayer time wasn't mentioned in any of those stories. The scientific thing is always, well, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but yeah, I believe that there was a cause and effect relationship with those prayers and the material world. The book of Revelation talks about the prayers of the saints being collected in heaven. They go up as incense before the throne. And the angels gather the prayers in a golden censer and hurl the prayers down to the earth. And there's earthquakes and lightning and peals of thunder. And there's a cause and effect relationship between the prayers of the saints and events on earth.
How great the love of Jesus Christ. Upon the cross of Calvary, the blood was shed that pardons me. No longer bound, no